Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I am Laura Carfing, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Thank you to our sponsors at Store My Tumor for making our podcast possible. Store My Tumor provides personalized treatment options that help you stay in remission longer. Live tumor preservation, genetic sequencing, sensitivity testing, and immunotherapies are just some of the options available. Hello, my friends. I'm so happy to be connecting with you this week on Breast Cancer Conversations. I'm your host, Laura Carfing, and if you're joining us for the first time, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and receive notifications each week we come out with a new episode. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Spotify. And to all of you who tune in every week, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. In this episode, I am so excited because we have two special guests with us today in the room. This is a live recording with head coach Laura Dubois and former COO transitioning to vision board extraordinaire and life coach and business coach, Andrea Magni. We are all breast cancer survivors, all with different phases, different choices in terms of the surgeries that we decided to opt and have, the different types of treatment we received. And I just wanted to get all of us in a room so we can talk about, obviously, breast cancer, but also I want to learn more about what it means to be a coach, how you guys came to become coaches. Was this before or after your breast cancer diagnosis? And the importance of coaching and how that can help all of us. In this episode, not only do we dive deep into coaching, but we also talk about transitions. For example, what it's like to go back to work after a breast cancer diagnosis.
You don't want to be constantly looking for sympathy.
Right.
There is an element of you do want to be included in some of those projects and you do want to be asked for your input. So you don't want to be excluded. And how do you bridge between suffering from these people don't understand what I'm going through and I'm sitting here and I'm pain or I'm uncomfortable.
From the worker standpoint, how do you build the boundaries? When I went back to work, I went back to work as a physical therapist.
Oh.
So it was a very physical job and I was taking care of other people, but inside I didn't feel totally healed yet. And it was really difficult because they're coming to me with their issues and I have to be a stand for them. And at the same time, I was crumbling and I had to hold it together. It was very, very difficult.
About halfway through the podcast, you will have a special meditation provided by head coach Laura. And stay tuned to the very end because we're going to talk about the various surgeries we had, from a lumpectomy to double mastectomy and reconstruction with implants, and a mastectomy and reconstruction with the deep flap option. Welcome to the conversation. So welcome, ladies.
Hi.
How are you? Welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations. This is our podcast where we literally once a week have amazing conversations about absolutely everything and anything related to breast cancer. And we bring on guests to talk about anything from their own survivor stories to, best 10 tips I wish I knew before I went through chemotherapy or surgery. We bring in women who want to talk about health and nutrition and have an expertise in that particular background. We've actually had a couple of radiologists, psychologists, and oncologists on the show as well to provide that medical background. We get a lot of questions too of can you debunk these myths, or what really happens when we get a call back? What happens to our tissue after you do a biopsy? Where does it go? What happens to it?
Wow.
So there's a lot of things that, we've experienced as people living through a breast cancer diagnosis, but I still feel like I'm learning something new every single day. And that's why I love having these conversations, because we all bring together just a different perspective. So today, I'm so excited for all of my listeners to be tuning in today. We have a great show. This is actually one of the first times that we are bringing multiple people on the show. So if you can vision the coffee table chat where we have Laura Dubois, who is here with us today. And then we also have Andrea, is it Magni?
Magni, yeah.
Magni. Okay, I never know with the Italian
Well,
pronunciation.
it is Italian, but then you spend half your day trying to explain how it works.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm always lasagna. It's got that
Yeah,
GM.
Magni.
Yeah,
Yes, Magni. But
Magni.
Magni's good.
Absolutely. So welcome to Laura and Andrea. And I thought today we would talk a little bit about the synergies. There's a reason behind this madness of bringing you guys both here together, because I had the pleasure of meeting both of you separately and having just really great, deep conversations about not only your journey and experience with breast cancer, but also how this has led to a career and business of coaching. And I would love to just dive into, what that path looked like. Yes, we want to talk about breast cancer, but I am dying to know more about like the coaching side. I feel like this is a term we hear all the time, especially like this day and age. Everyone is either aspiring to be a coach or they know someone who's in a coaching business. And, there's so many benefits of being coached also, and how you can professionally grow, whether you're kind of going through a block of some sort in your life, or you need to get over something like a breast cancer diagnosis experience, right? So there's a lot of benefits here too. So I wanted to bring both of you on today so we can hear kind of that perspective, and not expecting all of us to agree, but really just share your philosophies also around the coaching business. So those are the two topics that I'm planning on speaking about today. But of course, it's very Q&A, and we flow based on how the conversation goes. So that's a little bit about my introduction. So before we jump straight into everything, Laura, how about you give an introduction about yourself, where you're from, and just some background?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Laura Dubois, and I have been a physical therapist for over 20 years, since before becoming a coach. And so I've been used to taking care of people. That is part of my DNA. And I knew that I needed to do something bigger and more impactful after my breast cancer experience. And that is how I ended up coming to be a coach, because I want to be able to help others along the way and on the other side. I'm more focused on moving the way forward. I'm not being in the middle of it. You definitely need help, but my forte is better working with women they've finished their treatment, and now what? They're sitting in this. It was like do you ever hear the game of cards, a 52 pickup? You take the cards, you throw them in the air, and then they land, and now you're like, oh, now what? That's what I can help with.
Yes.
Help pick those cards up and figure out how they're going to be organized next.
Awesome. I love that. And I think there's some synergies there too, as you and I were talking about the work that we're doing at Surviving Breast Cancer, where there's so many great nonprofits out there to help during active treatment, financial resources, rides to and from radiation sessions, housekeeping, camps and daycare for children, etc. But there's not a lot afterwards, right? Where you're done with your active treatment and you're supposed to assimilate back into those traditional roles, back at your job, etc. But something has changed, and that becomes quite daunting. And no one told me that when I got diagnosed. I think we were so focused on the treatment plan, but not actually going into the depths of what this actually means longer term. Not that I would have been ready to hear that or handle that at the time, so I'm sure there's a reason they don't bring it up. But having some sort of coach or partner or social worker kind of along your side going through that path, I think would have been really beneficial also. We don't know what we don't know until we're going through it.
Absolutely.
And now this leads us to having a podcast and blogging about it in your businesses, because we realize that there are these gaps that we're filling. So thank you. Andrea, give us a little background about you.
So I come from Johannesburg in South Africa, and I moved to Boston 2 years ago, about 9 months after my treatment. I had treatment in South Africa and a double mastectomy. And I come from the business side of the world. So I was the COO of a company. And it's not that breast cancer changed that trajectory. That was changed by the decision to move here. So I'd already decided I didn't want to do corporate stuff anymore, because, you want to change. And after breast cancer, it took a long time for me to understand where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. Was it psychology? Was it life coaching? And life coaching for me just seemed to have so much more potential of a forward-moving objective for people. What is it that you want, rather than what went wrong and how can we fix it? So I'm a life coach, but I'm also a business coach. And I think what you were just saying, so often we have our treatment, and some of us we don't feel sick before breast cancer is found, right? So day one, you're fine. Then you're told you have cancer, your world falls apart, you get sick, you're treated with things that make you sicker. And once you've had your treatment, your body is no longer what it was before, but everyone is expecting you to go back to normal.
Right.
And even yourself, you're so quick to say, when will I be able to do this? When will I be able to do that again? And there's a need for us to have a gentleness and an approach to how do we get from the one place to the next. And I understand, and I agree with you. I think in the middle of all of that, there is a lot of support that helps you. But once those cards fall, oh my word, then you start to realize what the new normal is or isn't or will be and how to tackle it. And my sort of speciality would be around how to do that with work in mind, because very seldom breast cancer survivors can't work afterwards. You have to go back to work in most cases. And how do you do that? How do you do that with the brokenness that you feel, plus you want to make money for your family, so you still want to be contributing. So so that's pretty much, I'm blending the life coaching, my breast cancer experience, but also my business experience.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of transitions we have to navigate that it can feel very lonely and very daunting. I remember going back to work the first time, and all of my colleagues were phenomenal. Like, I had flowers at my desk, and everyone was so excited to see me. I had a little cute, like, pixie cut going on at the time because my hair was growing back, and it was wonderful for about 5 minutes. And then all the work was like, okay, you're back, thank you. This is like everything you missed, and dive right back into it.
And you've had your time off, so sure, you're fine now, right?
And that, I think, tended to be so overwhelming because you're still fatigued, you're still managing what we refer to as like that PTSD of a life-threatening disease. There's the aftermath in my case where I'm still on hormonal therapies for the next 10 years, but it doesn't look like I'm sick, right? Like, your hair's back, you're going to work, you're going through the day-to-day, and all of a sudden you're just like putting on like the strong grown-up, like,
and that incongruency is so jarring within yourself, because on the outside you look put together and functioning, and but on the inside it's just a big swirling mess, and you're trying to keep it together on the outside, but on the inside you're just, oh my goodness. So coaching is so helpful because of that. You know, you're held when you're in treatment. You are held so lovingly by your care team, and then it comes to an end where, okay, you're done your treatment, and then they let go of the hand, and you can feel very alone, like you said. So it's important to be able to connect, whether it's with a coach or with a group of women, such as via survivingbreastcancer.org, to be able to share what's going on after that, because there's so much more healing going on after the treatment, and that's what I discovered, and that was the biggest shock of the whole thing for me.
Yes.
What we keep explaining to folks, nurse navigators or oncological teams that visit us at our exhibit booths, they ask what we do, and typically our response to them is, you are the primary caregivers, and when they leave you after, when they're going into post-active treatment stage, PTSD sets in walking out the door. And they all smile and they all recognize that that's the case, so you're spot on.
Sure. And it is incredible how much is done to make you look the same or better, you know. And so I think that's why a lot of the stuff at work falls away quickly, because you look like Laura. You know,
exactly.
You didn't look like Laura, and you didn't look like something fell apart. So you're expected to keep up and be who you were. Never mind that your brain's not working because now the hormone treatment hit you overnight and you've got menopause that just started today, not over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot we go through. And for some reason, it's conversations we hear one-on-one all the time, but it's not bubbled up yet to this surface where we're just all in a room talking about it. So I think that's really important for our listeners to hear, and for us, I find it to be so therapeutic to be like, oh my gosh, I'm not the crazy one. We're all like this.
Sure. And within that should also be I think what you're saying is being held, especially like in a work environment. You don't want to be constantly looking for sympathy. There is an element of you do want to be included in some of those projects, and you do want to be asked for your input. So you don't want to be excluded. And how do you bridge between suffering from these people don't understand what I'm going through, and I'm sitting here and I'm in pain or I'm uncomfortable, and actually being productive?
Exactly.
So you have to balance, you have to find something. So there must be tools that you can work with, and I think that's what coaches are good for, is to find tools for that resilience or to build it up and to build boundaries for yourself.
Sure.
Yeah, I had felt that actually. It's interesting. I felt that both ways. So from what you said, from the worker standpoint, how do you build the boundaries? When I went back to work, I went back to work as a physical therapist.
Oh.
So it was a very physical job, and I was taking care of other people. But inside, I didn't feel totally healed yet, and it was really difficult because they're coming to me with their issues, and I have to be a stand for them. And at the same time, I was crumbling, and I had to hold it together. It was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
How long did you do that for?
I'm actually still doing it, but I pulled back. So
Okay.
instead of full-time, I'm part-time. I'm still part-time, but eventually it's going to be no time as I build my coaching practice up. So
Sure. That takes time.
it takes
And
time.
hopefully something like this helps people too, to understand that you are available to them, because that's very important.
How long have you been a coach?
About 6 minutes.
6 minutes. That's what it feels like.
And all
doesn't
my
it?
life.
Yeah.
So it's like a
Yes.
weird yin and
Right.
yang, right? This is not, you go through the course and you're given labels for things that you go, oh crap, I've done that all my life. You've probably done that all your life
Well, I
too.
was coaching all my career as a PT. It's just a
Sure.
slight little shift.
It's the best analogy too, is coaching with a physical coach, is you hire a coach, like a personal coach if you're going to gym, and you want to transform something, or you want to move something, or you want to shift your body in a certain way. So you hire someone who has the expertise and who can push you to achieve your goals. Same with life, and finding, oh my God, I survived breast cancer, now what?
Right. Yes.
I didn't die, I'm uncomfortable, but here I am. And how do
Mhm.
I make it worthwhile?
Right. Again, so and being a survivor, so there's another little incongruency. You feel also very strong, like, don't get in my way. I survived cancer.
Yeah.
I can do anything now.
A little bit formidable.
Formidable. So you have that going on, and then also the, oh my goodness, how do I manage this new life now? How do I
Yes.
decide to put this foot forward and go next?
So tell me more about this transition from your diagnosis going back to PT, and when did you decide, Laura, that you wanted to go into coaching?
When I went back to work full-time, actually it was full-time. I went back initially full-time, and I had been back for about 6 weeks, and I was struggling with the fatigue, my brain wasn't, the synapses just weren't the
Sure.
same
Yes.
anymore.
I
And
even think sometimes it's recovery from the anesthetic too.
yeah, I had major surgery, and it just took a long time, and I was very fatigued. And this is kind of a long story, prior to being diagnosed with breast cancer, I was actually working with a career coach because I was trying to decide what was my next career move. So I was already kind of looking at other things. I knew I wanted to still be in a people health capacity. And then breast cancer came. And it kind of derailed and put everything off to the side. Didn't think anything about it. And then when I went back to work and was feeling the fatigue, and I was thinking, how can I take the best care of these people when I'm not even my best myself?
Sure.
So I knew I needed to do something for myself. So I enrolled in a coaching program,
Okay.
and I got coached. And it profoundly changed my world. And then I decided, well, I need to be a coach
Yes.
because I can make that switch. And so that's how it came about.
Amazing. Excellent. So kind of realizing that you needed a change and you needed a coach to help you kind of get to that next phase. And then because it's such a positive experience, you're now giving back and helping others.
One of the things I love to do is I volunteer at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute here in Boston in their mentor program. So right now I have 3 women who I privately mentor.
Okay.
I don't even think they know I'm a coach. I don't talk about that. It's not about that.
Right.
And then once a month we get together, the whole group, for speakers and dinner. I think I've told you about that before. But that really speaks to me. That's the give back. And if anyone wants to speak with me as a coach, then that's there too. But I don't talk about that.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. And that's healing in its own way for you too.
It is.
Being able to help others.
It is. I felt I had such great care that I do want to give back. It was a profound time. If I let myself, I'm not going to let myself on this podcast, but if you let yourself, you can cry still.
Sure.
One of the things I learned.
You're allowed to cry. You've got tissue.
One of the things I learned though was how loved I am. I probably knew it, but I didn't really totally know it until you're in a situation like that, and then people step up. And I'm sure you experienced where people step up and you're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea you were paying any attention to me.
Right.
So
Yeah, people come out of the woodwork. So, very nice.
Beautiful.
What about you, Andrea? How did you
How did I
transition?
decide on coaching?
Yes.
So, as a COO, it was my responsibility to manage the people in my organization. And so, coaching was something that's part of your role to develop people and to take them from one space to another space, always managing their expectations around what their career development is and how it matches the organization until you get to a place where either one of those can run out and then the person needs to grow into the next space, which I was always very good at. I mean, I had my call center manager was fantastic. She used to grow people until they didn't want to work for her anymore, or couldn't work for her anymore because they were just too good and ready for the next role somewhere.
Sure. Yep.
And so so I've always used coaching in getting the best out of people and being so rewarded by seeing them grow. And my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer several years ago, but she had her treatment, and she was re-diagnosed 4 years ago and died just under 4 years ago. And that was very traumatic. Made me go and have my mammograms and things. It was clear. I went, oh, that doesn't feel right. You know when you have that voice in your head. So I got sent for a second opinion, and then they found my tumors.
Oh, wow.
And so we had such a tumultuous time. My father lost my mother, his mother, and I had breast cancer diagnosis within 3 or 4 months of each other. And I just went straight back to work. I had my double mastectomy, reconstruction, went on tamoxifen, straight back to work because, this is what we do, right? So I had...
It's hard to sit still.
But speaking to William's thing is, I had PTSD. I didn't know I did, but it hit me after we moved here because we moved and suddenly I wasn't in a role where I was COO. My last day was on the end of July, and then we landed 2nd of August, and then I go, oh, what's that feeling? Why do I feel so bad? And why am I sore? And the things you do, the medical things that come afterwards, like collapsed lungs or, things that you just don't know. And people think, well, we've treated you, so you're fine. You shouldn't be needing more stuff. And while I had all this time to deal with, moving and getting kids settled in a school, my first thought was carrying on my psychology degree, getting my PhD in psychology. And then I thought, I didn't really want to do that because the way in which it worked didn't seem as positive and powerful for me. I understand its role, but it wasn't something I felt comfortable with. And then I was invited to a coaching, free trial evening thing by one of the groups that does coaching training. And I sat there and it felt like I was in a room full of my people. It was...
Really? I totally resonate with that because when I first started it, I felt like, oh my gosh, these are the people that get me.
Yeah.
They're like me.
And while we were training, I think I had some of the best coaching by people that just sat, we were doing test coaching and understanding principles and working through different ways of approaching clients. And we had the best coaching because everybody was so aware of you, they knew who you were, and they were invested in how you were going to get to the next space, but as well as their learning. So it was very, very rewarding, and it's been great since then because now I have clients that I get to do that with. And it is, it's a rewarding role. So that was my transition. It wasn't really like a road to Damascus moment. It was just like you've been doing this all along anyway.
Sure.
Yeah. Now I just got to find a way to make money out of it, as I think you are, because it's hard to get it monetized for people. It's hard for people to understand what it is that you do in the role that you have. When you're a physical therapist, there's a set of rates, and everybody understands what you're going to do. You're going to move me from A to B. Whereas a coach is sort of, okay, do you make money out of that? What are you going to do? Or,
It's not like a physical product that we can.
It's not a product. It's not a service. And sometimes the work that you do with somebody in a session doesn't hit them until 2 weeks later, and they'll be thinking, "Oh, that's what we were doing."
Yes.
So it's not like you went to the hairdresser, you came out, and your hair was beautiful and short, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like this evolution of like that, what that process is like, what that journey is like.
And it is an investment, but it's an investment in wellness, which is a complete paradigm shift and thought shift from investing in illness, which is what in this society we tend to do. We go to the doctor when we're sick.
Mm-hmm.
What about when you're well? What about doing the things to stay well so that you don't have to go to the doctor because you don't get sick or you get sick less?
And taking care of the whole picture of you, because you aren't just your illness. Whether you're cured or you're still managing that process, there is this whole world that you exist in.
Yes.
I mean, I've had my 10-year-old daughter, when I had had my surgery, my 10-year-old daughter, because my mum had had it and I had it, she came to me and she said, "Mommy, am I going to have this surgery one day?"
Yeah.
And I said to her, I don't know. But what I do know is I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that if you do, I'm here.
Yes.
And so this world isn't just this person who went through the illness. It's everything around it. It's your financial planning, because I'm sure that becomes a big priority.
Yes.
It's your environment. Suddenly, I think most people are going to have that moment where they look around and they go, "That's not me anymore. Like that rug is not me anymore."
Yeah, what are you feeding yourself? What senses? It's not just what you're putting into your body food-wise, nutrition. It's what are you looking at? What are you experiencing?
Yeah.
Who are you hanging out with?
Yeah.
You want to be with people who get you and who will uplift you, and you want to be having experiences that enrich you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another reason why I ended up I knew I needed to transition away from what I was doing. I was the manager, and it just wasn't feeding my soul anymore.
Right.
It was, spreadsheets and HR stuff, and also carrying a caseload. And I kind of ran myself into the ground with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I those years leading up to getting cancer, I wasn't taking the best care of myself, honestly.
Sure.
I was missing the forest for the trees because I
Yeah.
was so focused on that.
I had a friend of mine who told me this long before I had my cancer, and I completely understand it now. He said, "We all have two lives, and the second starts the moment you realize you only have the one."
Oh, I like that.
And so this is what happens, like a president in his second term can be way more radical, right? So we're in our second term, and we can imagine a life that is full, that is whole, that is powerful, that is everything you want, right? And that's that's what coaching does. It's saying, what do you want, and let's get you there, right? First, you want to test, is that really what you want? Because sometimes people, can be unsure, but really helping them get there.
Yeah.
That sounds like the title for this podcast.
Which is that? What do you want?
No. The
Starting your life.
Second life.
Yes.
Second life. Yes. And then finding out what's making you tick. What's your motivation? Because sometimes that can take a couple of sessions to find out exactly what's motivating someone. They may say, "Oh, I want to lose 10 pounds," but really, what is it? Why do you want to lose 10 pounds? What's that going to do
Is it
for
around
you?
health, or is it around, do you want to look good in the dress, or is it?
Yeah. Usually there's a deeper meaning, deeper reason why someone, it's not about that. It's like
it's a symptom of it.
It's a symptom, exactly. But that's how it's expressed. So that's what we hear as coaches. We hear that surface stuff, and it's our job is to gently and with trust and time to uncover the stuff that's covering it up, so that we get to the root cause of what do you really want? Why do you want it? What's going to motivate you to keep on doing what you need to do to get it?
Mm-hmm.
To keep you on track, because it's so easy to start to try and do something, and then you're really great guns at it for 4 weeks or whatever, and then I don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
Well, was your reason compelling enough?
Right.
Yeah.
So do you extrapolate this through like a series of questions and like just digging deeper, and when you have these coaching sessions with people, or how do you? What's the magic that happens? I'm very curious. You guys like
that's the magic. That's the magic.
Oh.
Curiosity.
Okay.
That's the magic. Is tell me about you. I want to hear what goes on. I mean, Albert Einstein said, "I'm nothing. I'm not extraordinary. I'm just passionately curious." And that's what created all the stuff that he did.
Yes.
And that's what a coach does. A coach sits down and just wants to unpack and find stuff and help you.
And then being objective, we can start to see patterns in relationships and then reflect that back in a way that they can understand it. And be dissociated and look at themselves more
Sure.
objectively too. Because
Okay.
when you're in the thick of it, you can't see it. It's like,
Oh, of course.
put your finger on your nose, you can't see
Yeah.
your fingertip.
And that'll
full
usually
of hair.
happen 5 minutes before the end of the session. It'll be like some pivotal, oh yes. And you go, oh.
Right. Yeah. Well, I know we're always talking to you about like trying to cultivate that like self-awareness and just being aware of like your presence, your relationships, your the experiences that you're giving when you're interacting with other people around you. And that can get buried when we're just living in like the day-to-day, rushing from the grocery store to the job, to the gym, back home, trying to cook dinner, back to sleep, and then you repeat. But you do this again and again and again, that it's very easy to just kind of put those like blinders on.
Sure.
And then finally when you take a moment to like breathe and look up, you're like, wow, it's fall, the colors are changing, or different things like that to kind of bring you back to some sort of grounding.
Exactly. Stay in the present moment.
Exactly.
But you also want to be moving forward, but you have to, because the world can swirl around you, and you have to learn how to pull back, step back, take it. Like I literally teach people how to breathe. That's one of the things.
That's beautiful.
Just
That's
take
beautiful.
a deep breath, and once they learn how to do that, you can access that anytime, anywhere, 1 minute, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It could be in the middle of a chaotic situation.
Can we like do that for our listeners right now?
Please, please,
Yes.
please,
Can we,
breathing
like,
exercise.
all-
Would you like to do a breathing exercise?
I would love to
Amen.
do a breathing exercise.
Okay. Would you like me to do it, or do you want to do it?
Go ahead. No,
Okay.
no.
All right. So I'm going to ask you to, first of all, close your eyes. And I'm going to close my eyes too. And I would like you to put one hand on your heart, maybe the other hand on your belly. And I know you've got a microphone, Laura, so do your best. And take a big, deep breath in. And feel the chest rise. When you exhale, I want you to imagine anything that's not serving you is just going to go right out with that exhale. Take another big deep breath in. Now imagine on this breath that you're pulling in a big golden ball of light and warmth. And it's going to go to every cell in your body, and especially anything that is bothering you, anything that is tight, tense, pain. Take another big deep breath in and let that flow there. Our bodies are very intuitive and it knows what it needs. And let that melt away. With every exhale, you just let your shoulders drop. And just get present to the moment and imagine you're in a bubble. It's just you and your thoughts, and maybe even no thoughts. That's sometimes the beauty too. We don't have to think. And if you feel a thought bubbling up, just acknowledge it and say, oh, okay, there you are, thought. I'm gonna clear my mind again. Big deep breath in. And put it at the top. And exhale slowly. That's just a little sampling.
Wow.
That was wonderful.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Like the immediate 5 or 6 breaths and just calming
calms you right down.
completely.
You know, Herbert Benson, famous doctor who wrote the relaxation response. He was from Boston,
Okay.
with the Beth Israel group, I think. And so when you can tune into that and allow yourself to relax, your blood pressure will go down, endorphin levels can go up. I mean, all that good sciencey stuff, it just feels so good. So one of the things I do in my practice is sometimes I will take one whole session and lead someone through a visualization and tape record it.
Yes.
And then they get to keep it. And then they can listen to it whenever they need to.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think there's so much too where even just being able to fill up your lungs to capacity, like we don't even know how to breathe right, where we take a lot of these short breaths and we just are busy. I know breathing happens kind of subconsciously to us, but to intentionally take that deep breath and utilize the capacity of your lungs and filling it up and, exhaling.
Breast cancer people. So if you've had a reconstruction with implants,
Mm-hmm.
your implants are placed between the pec minor and pec major. Your chest capacity to open up and breathe is now inhibited by up to 20%.
Mm.
So breathing becomes very different. So if you had asthma before, I had asthma before, but I was a high functioning asthmatic because it didn't really bother me. Now I have impaired lung functioning because of the implants. Some of the 10 things you don't know before you have all these things. So now I have to learn, I have to do breathing exercises. I mean, I actually, when you said, see yourself in a bubble, I actually felt like I was going to float away. It was quite beautiful. So I think that around this, the self-care, we often think of self-care as being, the woman's magazine version of self-care. There's some hairdos and some nails and things. But self-care truly is self-aware people rarely do harm in the world or in their world, right? Whether it's on a small level or a big level. And if you are breathing, you're taking better care of yourself. If you're nourishing your body and your soul, you're taking better care of yourself. And that self-care stuff's very, very important.
100%. Yeah. I was at the doctor's recently. Back in August, I had terrible allergies and I had a cold that just was not going away. And I have to commend myself. I haven't freaked out too much thinking there was recurrence, but occasionally this cold just was not going away. And I had my colleagues finally were like, you have to go to the doctors. I'm not sure if it's bronchitis or something is going on because the Claritin and all the allergy medicines were not working. And so I go, and again, I think this is also another thing that the doctors don't tell you or prepare you for. So I go see my primary care. It has nothing to do with my oncological team. I see my regular practitioner, explain my symptoms, and she was like, oh, okay, well, let's go just get a chest x-ray just to make sure that there's no fluid, because they want to rule out pneumonia and make sure that there's no fluid in the lungs. So I'm like, sure, no problem, we can do a chest x-ray. Well, I get a call back the next day, and they want to bring me back because they had some concerns about the chest x-ray. And I'm like, I'm familiar.
That's all you're waiting for, right?
Yeah.
Confirmation. Absolutely. Here we go.
And, I think we are sometimes accustomed to now at mammography or other types of tests of getting the call back. But this was allergies and cold and a chest x-ray. My mind wasn't even thinking, cancer. So I started freaking out. I'm like, why? What was wrong? What did you see? Why do we need to do this again? And, I love how diligent the doctors can be. But it's still in the back of our mind, can we ever just go back to the doctors and have a routine checkup with routine results without having to be tested because we're high risk for so many other complications? Sure. Luckily, apparently, I have so much scar tissue, the x-ray couldn't see through a lot, so they just wanted to take more images. So, knock on wood, it wasn't too alarming, but they have my chart. They should have taken more images.
Yes, it would be very nice if somebody had said, look, she's a cancer patient. Let's reassure her when we phone her that it's not a big deal, even though, normally you can't say.
Exactly, yeah. So that was just an interesting, hiccup of, gosh, we have so much going on, and I wanted to relate this back to the lungs with this breathing exercise because they actually gave me one of those, blow tubes. There's, a little blue ball, and you have to inhale, and the ball goes up.
Spirometer.
What's it called?
It's called an incentive spirometer.
Okay, an incentive spirometer. And they were saying that's a great exercise I should be doing because it'll open up these little...
your alveoli that are basically collapsed or have pressure from the surgery.
Yeah, so I didn't know. So I thought that was great. And then, of course, I had radiation also. So now I'm concerned about the radiation effects on my chest and my lungs and my heart and all of this great stuff. But, these breathing exercises help all of that. Sure. And so I think I don't want to diminish breathing, and doing it correctly and properly and being intentional about how you're doing it because there's so many benefits that come from it. So thank you for sharing that.
Breathing and hydrating. We like plants. Sophisticated plants.
We need O2 and H2O.
Yes. Excellent. Well, can I turn the questions around and hear a little bit more about your experience with breast cancer? I love having people on the show to actually talk and share a little bit about their journey and the treatments that they were on, how they found that they had breast cancer, and the type of breast cancer that you found. Just because every day I'm always surprised how many different variations there are. Sure. And then also the choices people make based on, we can have a very similar diagnosis, but someone may refuse chemotherapy, or someone may choose a different type of reconstruction, or not to have reconstruction. So I love being able to kind of paint this grandiose picture of, okay, this is all breast cancer, but it's all individualized and so personal.
It so is. Yeah. So I was diagnosed from a routine mammogram. I had just turned 50, and I was still on vacation. It was the end of the summer of 2016, and I went in for my routine mammogram. And, accustomed to go in and get your mammogram, change, okay, see you later. And I think, okay, I'm going to get a little skinny envelope thin envelope in the mail in a few days. But this time was different. It was, after I was dressed, the tech asked me to undress again.
Oh boy.
And asked, please, we need some more images. And she was acting really strange, and I thought, oh, it must be because wasn't even cluing in. I thought it was, oh, she feels bad because she didn't take good images of me. And I thought that she felt embarrassed because she didn't do it. She's embarrassed because she didn't do a good job. So I'm like, oh, yeah, sure, very agreeable. Go get more images. But then the radiologist came.
Wow.
The actual radiologist, she was on site, and she had read them on site, on the spot, and came and talked to me. And she told me what she saw, and I was just in utter shock.
Wow.
It's amazing how in a second your life changes. That's
second.
why going to the doctor is so scary.
Yes.
Because you know it's routine, and you know there's nothing wrong, and you just go, and you know that any minute now, like a routine, your life changes like this.
Yeah. And I don't think I knew that.
It's your second life.
And that's when your second life starts. That's when your second life starts.
It wasn't confirmed, though, for 3 weeks.
Oh.
So that was an agonizing 3 weeks.
How did you cope?
I just worked and talked to my husband. I really kind of kept it to myself. I didn't really tell anybody. I was like, well, what's the tell? Why should I get everybody else up in arms and worried? And so I was diagnosed by core biopsy and MRI. And it was DCIS. It was early stage. And it was recommended that I have a lumpectomy and radiation. And so I said, okay. And that's how we started, except when they analyzed after the lumpectomy, found out that they didn't get clear margins. So I had to have a repeat lumpectomy.
Oh my gosh.
2 weeks later. And in the meantime, they had analyzed the cells and found out, oh, well, this needs chemotherapy.
Oh.
So I had been preparing myself for a lumpectomy and radiation, and now all of a sudden, I've had 2 lumpectomies. There's not going to be radiation. It's going to be chemotherapy. And oh, by the way, we're not going to do a third lumpectomy because what's the point? There'll be nothing left. So we're going to do a mastectomy. Well, they didn't dictate it that way. I'm just saying that's how.
It's not like you sometimes don't feel like you have a choice, right?
Well, it was kind of weird because initially my first thought was, give me a mastectomy. I just don't want to be worrying about this. Just get rid of it. I am not attached to these breasts. They're ornamental at this point. They did their job. I fed my children. I was fine with it. And my surgeon was like, well, we have wonderful outcomes and it's the same. And, we can have an excellent cosmesis. You don't need to go through all of that and the recovery will be easier. And I said, okay. And then when I went back to it, I said, I should have stuck with my own instinct. My own instinct was to just get a mastectomy from the get-go.
Sure.
And I'm glad in the end that I had the second lumpectomy, though, because they analyzed and they found out they got it all. But I've heard stories of women having lumpectomy and then it comes back later because they don't, maybe on the analysis it shows that they've gotten it all, but you can't always get it all. And then years later they have it come back. So for me, mastectomy was the choice that I needed to make. And I chose to do it by way of a deep flap.
Okay.
So I wasn't, and I'm single. I didn't want to do double. I just thought, okay, I'll just leave well enough alone, and I'm going to trust God that it's going to just stay on the one side. And I had the deep flap, and I do not regret that. That was a very difficult recovery. Very difficult.
It's like 2 traumas, right?
Well, I have an incision across my belly from hip to hip, where they took the abdominal fat tissue, and then they have to do microsurgery. They dig down into your abs and take the vessels, and then they bring them back up and marry them to the cut vessels from your former breast. So it's microsurgery. It took about 10 hours
Oh my word.
and 3 surgeons. And it was just for that alone. Imagine being under anesthesia for that.
They
Oh,
switch your
yes.
central nervous system off. That's what I
Oh,
don't
yes.
understand.
Right.
They switch your central nervous system off, and you're supposed to be fine the next day.
Oh, I was not fine.
No, I think even just the anesthetic alone is its own trauma.
Yes, completely.
It took a while.
How did you decide to do the DIEP flap versus implant? Was that ever an option or consideration?
I wanted DIEP flap first of all. I wasn't comfortable with implant. I had done, and I don't want to scare anybody, but I had, just for my own self, I didn't want something artificial that could potentially leak, and then I would have to maintain, and then I have to go back to the doctor every so often and maybe have to change it around. I just wanted to be one and done. I just didn't want to deal with it. And I wanted something natural, and I thought if I can't have a DIEP flap, I was going to go flat.
Mm-hmm.
If they couldn't do a DIEP flap, I was considering doing a double mastectomy and staying flat.
Sure.
I was more comfortable with that than an implant. And as it turned out, they deemed me indeed fat enough to have a DIEP flap.
Damn it!
Shucky darn.
It's like the one you don't want,
Right.
So I was so glad. I was so glad. And then they have to do a CAT scan to analyze your vessels to make sure that they are
Sure.
oriented and long enough and in the right place.
Okay.
Wow.
So you have to be fat enough, you have to be healthy enough, and you have to have the right constitution of vessels.
Sure.
And it fit the bill, so that's what I chose to do. But it was months and months of recovery, and I remember going back to work after 4 months, and my abdominal muscles would cramp involuntarily. I would just be sitting still or standing still, and they would cramp.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like Charlie horse in your belly. And
Ugh.
the doctors didn't know what to do about that. So I thank my PT colleagues because they said, let's do some deep tissue work.
Oh,
And
amazing.
they did some deep tissue work, and then I used kinesio tape, if you've ever heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wore kinesio tape, a strip on each side
Fantastic.
for 2 weeks straight. I just kept changing it every
Yeah.
4 days, and it got rid of the cramps. It was like
Oh,
miraculous.
Oh my gosh.
And I just
Amazing.
want to tell all the doctors, look, if someone comes and says they have stomach cramps, their
Yes.
muscles are just kind of firing,
Oh.
this can,
You need to write a
Really
blog
helps.
for us. Like, would you please, like,
I would be
Yeah.
happy to.
have that and yeah,
That's
because
a
I
wonderful suggestion.
absolutely have it on like your blog and everything
Yeah,
too. I mean, this is information where, like, I think us women, right? Like, we all, yes, have breast cancer, but we all have these like amazing professional lives that we could really come together and just like be this huge wealth of resources and information and educate the doctors and educate people who are going through this and have these symptoms. So I would love to have something on our website if you're willing to share, like, this is what I recommend, and this worked for me,
Absolutely.
because
Sure.
what works for one person may not work for the other, but some person might be gravitating and need that. So
And it's
I would
so
love that.
simple.
exactly.
It's so simple. I mean, you could be taught to do it to yourself. Some people don't have the constitution to do that, so like you might not want to do it. But the kinesio tape is easy to do to
Sure.
yourself.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I mean,
That's
and if you get someone who shows you once,
Right.
maybe you could do a little
You can do a
video.
little video. I've
Oh,
done that
wow.
actually for other things, but yeah, I could do a video.
oh, super fun.
Sounds like fun. Look at all these ideas we're
Awesome.
coming up with.
So, going back to your point about that choice of do I get a mastectomy or a lumpectomy, that is something that I think weighs on everyone's minds if they have a choice. Because, again, depending on the cancer or how, if it's like splatter pain against the wall or if it's just one small tumor, that'll also play a role into the decisions and eligibility for these different types of treatment options. So I was in the same boat where I was eligible for a lumpectomy, and I was happy about that. My doctors were quite confident that I was a good candidate for that. And poor William, I think every other night we're sitting on the couch and I'm like, Googling everything, reading everything, and just figuring out, like, one day maybe it's a mastectomy, one day it's going flat, one day it's the lumpectomy. And, it really just depended on the day and how either happy or angry I was with all the hormones that you're going through and the changes. And I ended up going with the lumpectomy. And I wouldn't even say taking a chance, because I know exactly what you mentioned. Like, okay, well, if I do leave some tissue, will it come back? But after having a lot of conversations, feeling quite confident with my medical team, that the combination of the lumpectomy plus the radiation was as effective as if I were to get a full mastectomy. So, I know there's still a lot of research out there that are trying to compel like where we are right now with technology and treatment options. So, I think it can be argued anyway, right? But at the end of the day, when you can look in the mirror and feel very confident about your decision, you made the right decision.
Right.
And I think that's the most important piece.
And when we chat with caregivers and we give speeches around the country with regards to the role of the caregiver, and it's certainly to be as supportive as possible, but that the final decision is the patient, not you.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of women have an issue with that. I guess we'll have to raise that down in Baltimore. But a lot of women have issues. Some women don't even tell their husbands they have breast cancer, and they go through this, and then they're afraid that their husbands or spouses will no longer provide or care for them because of the disfigurement or whatever, and it's a horrible thing. But mentally, think about how horrible that is to have to keep that in. So
it's a very lonely disease.
It is.
Every decision you make ultimately is nobody else's.
Right.
Your doctor can influence you, your caregiver, your spouse, somebody can help you with decisions or things, but ultimately you make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and go, actually, I think I made the right decision.
Yes. Yes. And I was so scared to look, like when I woke up the next morning from surgery, like, did I want to peek and see what happened? Did I not want to peek under the gauze? I had 3 different drains also, 2 for each, or 1 for each side, plus 1 for the full node dissection that I had. And I'm a very squeamish person, but I just remember like needing to be brave. And like the first time I had to like drain the tubes and like measure the blood and all of this like science project stuff.
Mm-hmm.
William was there, my mom was in town, and my mom was like, do you want me to come in the bathroom with you? And I'm like, no, I need to do this by myself. I need to, confront whatever is under this slowly and kind of see, like, I can just remember that experience, like those emotions and that like peeling off of the surgical bras and taking a look. And then also the positive side that I had these drains literally hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, but they don't hurt, right? Like, I think my mind was getting so nervous. But I'm like, nope, it goes into my side, and it's gross, but I'm okay. So I'm like, I'm okay. I can do this. Check the other one. You're like, okay. And really just coming to terms with, like, we're going to be fine, right? It's new to us. We've never done this before. Doctors do it all the time. And, we got to clean it, make sure we don't get infections, but like, we're going to be fine. And I think that was really empowering for me, and to do this lonely journey by myself to, come to terms with it when I was ready to slowly peel off the surgical bra.
Yeah. It is a lonely disease. Now, I personally didn't even occur to me to try and reach out to speak with other women when I was in the thick of it.
Really?
I didn't know about the resources that were available. I just didn't know. I thought I was just gonna, I was lucky. I had my husband and my children, and I have 4 sisters and 2 brothers, and I had a lot of family support.
Yeah.
So I was very supported, but it wasn't until later that I discovered all the social groups and the online groups, and I was like, wow, where was I? But I guess I have to realize they're there. I just wasn't ready for it.
Oh, absolutely.
So
And also, you don't want 50 million opinions on what you should be doing.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone
Everyone has
the 3 that you did have were hard enough to filter down.
Yeah.
Right?
So.
And one more question I have for you too, Laura, is so you mentioned, I don't know if you know like the science or more information about this, but you mentioned after they did the surgery and studied your pathology of your tumor, it was decided then at that point that you did need chemotherapy.
Yeah.
Do you know what it was or the characteristics of the tumor that now
I do not
changed?
know.
Okay.
I do not know. That's a great question, and I've never known the answer to that because I never asked it, and I'm like a science-based person.
You're amazingly trustful.
I was able to just like delve. I just didn't.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can probably find out, but I don't know.
Yeah, because I know too, some people are eligible for like this Oncotype DX test, where, and I don't know the science behind it either. I was not eligible for this test because my cancer spread into my lymph nodes. So the moment that it spread into my lymph nodes, I needed chemotherapy. That was like a no-brainer. But for some people, if it's an early stage type of cancer and your tumor is a certain size and does not have, has not advanced into the lymph nodes, there's this Oncotype DX test that people can do. And I'm actually working on a blog for this, so I'm doing like a little bit of research on this type of test. So it's anywhere, there's a scale between, I'm assuming it starts at 0, I'm not really sure the first number, like 0 to 30 or 0 to 35, there's some sort of range. And whatever, when they test your tumor, if you come back, I want to say below 20, there's some number, again, who's ever listening to this, please take this with a grain of salt right now because I don't have all of the facts, but there is a number that if you're below a certain number, you do not need chemotherapy. And then if you're either in this gray area or above, they recommend chemotherapy because that information increases the likelihood of the cancer coming back. And so I think there's some sort of like Oncotype score.
I had that screening on mine.
You did?
Yeah, but I don't remember the numbers, and mine was well within the range that said I didn't need.
Yes.
Exactly. Part of the reason, it's all coming back to me now, that they said I was a candidate for chemotherapy was because it had microinvasion. There was invasion.
Oh.
It wasn't I didn't have just a tumor.
Yeah.
It was like you said before,
yes.
the paint splatter on the wall.
Yes.
That's what I had, multiple teeny weeny things all over the place, and they couldn't be sure.
Yeah.
So that was why it was recommended. And I took it as an insurance policy.
Absolutely.
I said, I'm going to take it because I have 2 children to raise.
100%.
I don't think anybody's decision here was low risk.
Right.
Or, or sort of saying let's be conservative.
Right. No, we were like as aggressive as possible.
I'm different from both of you. When I've worked in a breast cancer charity community for 20 years.
Yes.
And my mother, when she was diagnosed, I got her in with everybody that I knew that could help her. When I was diagnosed, it was straight. There was no negotiation. It was, what is the maximum that I can do? My kids were 10 and 11, and I just know that there are enough people that I've known over 20 years who have had it come back from treating conservatively, or like just enough for me to go 10 years from now, if it comes back, I want to be able to say, okay, so I threw everything at this.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do now? Rather than me being sitting and going, oh, I wish I'd done something different. I made a very bold decision, and that was, but my mom had it. I don't have any genetic predispositions to it. I don't have BRCA.
Mm-hmm.
She's estrogen positive. Mine's estrogen positive. I just decided that was me.
Yeah.
And I have implants. I call these the 2.0s. The 2.0s have, version 2.0, they have way more fun than the 1.0s. They wear bikinis.
Oh, yes.
They just,
I love that.
because, and that's one of the things that it cues into, you say, your passions and who you are. I reframe everything.
Mm-hmm.
When you talked about, this is just another sort of version of your breasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was me. That was why they became the 2.0s. They've been every size possible, as I've been every size possible.
Sure.
When I had babies, they were, interesting. Breastfeeding, I felt like Pamela Anderson. There was a whole, the relationship I had with them was, okay,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be different. I mean, yeah, they don't feel the same. They're not, as sensitive, I guess.
Sure.
But you build stuff into it. You build your world around the fact that, okay, this is going to be a little bit different.
And you have such a positive attitude about that, which I think is so inspiring to hear, because it's so easy to kind of want to fall back to like the pre-cancer you and do all of these comparisons. And like, I love the fact that you're embracing them and like, oh, and they wear bikinis. Like, it's not I wear bikinis, but they have bikinis. And like, they're so personified. You wrote an excellent blog that we were able to share on our newsletter and on our website as well. So for anyone listening, you should check out our survivor stories at survivingbreastcancer.org. And Andrea has her whole experience with breast cancer written there too. And it's a fun read because it's this lighthearted, life goes on, and
everybody's different. When my mom went through breast cancer, like your first 3 weeks, was my mom's whole treatment. No one was allowed to know. Not a soul was allowed to know. Not when she had it first, and not when it returned. So everybody's different, and you have to respect that. You have to know, we're not going to be broadcasting this human being, and that's why I think also because I've been in that community for so long and I've known so many people, I don't see, it's not that thing like, why me? It was, oh, well, of course it's me, right? It's all these beautiful people. Why wouldn't it be someone like me? And teach people and show people as much as you can. That's how I want to do this. Doesn't mean that's going to be everybody else's. Somebody else might want to retreat into that and go, let me deal with it. I'm bruised.
Absolutely.
One of the things I did, even though I wasn't connecting with other women, I was blogging about it. I blogged through the entire chemotherapy experience and then up until the deep flap surgery. And I was just sharing it with friends and family. It wasn't like a big public blog or anything. But a few of my lady friends and family shared that with other women that they worked with and who were experiencing breast cancer. Or then they started calling me. Can so-and-so call you? She just got diagnosed. And I was like, wow. So it was, I still have it. It's kind of like, I don't advertise it, but it's there for someone who may want to look at it if they, it's a lot at once. But I recommend that to people too, is if you write and you can process a lot of it by writing. Even if you don't think you're a writing, even if you don't think you're a writer, you can write.
Absolutely.
Even if it, just think of it just for yourself and just get it out.
And journal or draw. Journaling's really good.
Yeah, that's very healing.
We've had discussions with authors who use that as therapy for cancer treatment. And it does make a lot of sense. So do you want to give Laura your link so that, or do we have it already for the blog?
For the blog, it's just been parked there for a couple of years.
Sure.
It's
still not apropos.
Yeah, it was before I was coach. It was. It's called. I don't remember now. Laura's Landing Place. One word. Laura's Landing Place.blogspot.com.
Excellent. I can definitely link to that in the show notes as well, so people can find all of your resources, your blogs, your coaching businesses, how they can contact you, and all of that.
One of the nice, I ran a half marathon. I mean, you running like full marathons because
I don't
you're
know.
more insane than me.
The chemo made me do it. That's just like what I say.
Is that what it? Okay. Well, the 2.0s don't want to run a marathon. The 2.0s ran 2 half marathons. They're doing well.
Yes.
And I ran one, and one of the nicest things I did was I knew how long I was going to be running for, and I had a headset because I didn't run with people. I don't know crazy people, that kind of crazy.
Right.
So I ran on my own, and halfway through my playlist, when you're going to sort of struggle maybe just a little, I set up and cued all the female musicians who have had breast cancer, and how and that was such a motivational thing to hear these brilliant women from different genres, different types of music, singing in my ear and kind of going, come on, we'll be with you while you do all of this. So there are so many different ways of pushing through something or getting to do something. And listening to other women and hearing their stories, or even just hearing how they've survived it. Like most of these musicians sang these songs after they were treated. So it's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm not just laying down.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of great perspective that comes when you're on the other side. That, it's up to us to share that for people who are coming through.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're making it a lot easier for the women who are following you, because this sharing of the story and the experience can be incredibly inspirational for someone who is just feeling all of that agita as they matriculate into the process. So I think it's incredible. It gives me the most amount of pleasure, and we know 60,000 breast cancer survivors, and it's an incredible feeling to capture their story and put it out there. And out of all of our blogs and podcasts and survivor story requests, only one person has said no, that they didn't want to share it. And I said, that's yours. That's okay. We are a low stress operation.
Yeah.
We don't want to impact you in a negative way. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
We're here for when people want to be here, and we'll always be here. And when it's their time and they feel comfortable and they want to, we'll be here for them. So,
like what you said, and I think it comes from your own experience, because you didn't feel like there was anybody on that side of it. So in your coaching, you're coaching people that are the sort of when the what did you say the deck of cards was, the
52 pickup.
So that's also when you picked it up. That's when you realized, oh, there's a community and there are people that can help me. And so it's very good that you're actually doing this, mirroring it, because it's you.
So how are you guys doing now? Like, you're smiling, you have your coaching businesses, like...
I'm still in the bubble.
Yeah.
I'm
Good breathing exercise, like, we're ready to, like, get over the hump of the week.
Yeah,
So.
loving life. I'm blessed. I just was offered and accepted a coaching position with Health Coach Institute. So I'm now actually
Oh my gosh.
coaching students who are becoming health coaches.
Congratulations.
So that's exciting for me, as well as, developing my own.
Yes.
It's a lovely blend of what you've been your whole life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. And how can our listeners find your coaching?
I am at Laura, what is it? Wait a minute. headcoachlaura.com.
Okay.
One word, Head Coach Laura, HEAD. And that stands for Health, Energy, and Direction. So I got my little hat on.
Yeah, I love your
I
hat.
wanted to
Yes.
ask you, because I thought head coach, I
Yeah.
knew there was going to be something.
Excellent.
Oh.
I just
And
got
Andrea?
it.
Laura's going to be cross with me because I still don't have a website.
Oh, you need a developer.
I need a developer.
Yeah, because I do website design, I think, as
I
we
know.
mentioned.
I know.
And so
we're gonna. That's why I need you.
we'll
Right?
talk,
We'll
absolutely.
But I think I don't know if my contact details are on your site.
They are.
My telephone
yes.
number, my email address, and things.
Exactly. So on our website, we have a coaching page, and
Yeah.
it needs a little bit of updating, but absolutely. So anyone who's going to survivingbreastcancer.org, under resources, we have a list of coaches. And
just send me an email, and we can have a phone conversation around where you are and what it is that you think you where you want to be.
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
I need to figure that out, don't we all? But yeah, so I'm just discovering also like secret hidden talents that now that I'm launching this nonprofit, getting experience with like website design, building out our blogs, building out all of the search engine optimization to really put everything.
Can I just say this? You are a dynamo.
Oh,
I
thank
am
you.
The
so
second
involved.
life makes my second life look silly.
I can't believe how much you have done.
You're all
yourself.
awesome.
Because you and I
Thank
were
you.
on similar paths timing-wise,
Yes.
and I just look at how far you've come,
Oh.
how much you've done, and how much great you're doing in the world, and how many women you have impacted
Thank
and
you.
continue to impact. It's just amazing.
Thank you.
I've got to stop you there. I hear it as her caregiver. I hear it an awful lot. I'm not doing enough. I'm just not impacting enough people. I said, oh yes, you are.
Wow.
And so we get a lot of feedback from folks, and especially when we're live with people or we're doing a meet and greet or whatever, and that reinforcement is humongous for her. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But it literally is like using this morning as an example. Like, I'm excited to jump out of bed at like 4 o'clock in the morning and like do the emails and follow up with people and work on a newsletter or do a little bit of editing on the podcast before going to work. So it's when you feel that passionate about something, it just brings you joy. And so
It
that's
brings you joy and it drives you.
completely.
Yeah, it's a gift to be able to find that in life, that you feel so passionate about that,
Mhm.
that you don't even have to think about it. It's like, yep, up, this is what we're
This
doing.
is what we're doing.
And you feel aligned, and at the same time, you're helping so many people.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, this was so much fun. I thank you both so much for like taking the time out of your busy schedules to share your stories about breast cancer, your experiences as coaches, walking us through breathing and meditation exercises, and what just great value that our listeners can experience from this. So thank you both for taking the time to speak with us on Breast Cancer Conversations.
My pleasure.
Yes. And thank you everyone for listening to our show. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast are from personal experiences and are not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you're looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. Until next time, keep on thriving.